Hello everyone, welcome to this video which is in our Great Engine Middlegames series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we're taking a look at the game between Koivisto and Fritz in the TCEC Season 22 League 2. This is a very interesting position. It arose from a Rye Lopez, but it's got some of the characteristics of a King's Indian. In particular, we've got this block centre, pawn on d5. We've got black coming with a kingside pawn advance. The only slight difference is that in a King's Indian, of course, we probably have a pawn on c4 and a knight on c3. Here we've got a pawn on c3 and a knight on a3. That's not necessarily better for white. White's got to come up with a plan here, and what Koivisto does is very typical and also good, I think. It's e takes f5. G takes f5. Now it looks a little bit dangerous to concede these two central pawns with which could potentially move forward, but the problem for black is that how do you move them forward without creating a gap? F4 weakens the e4 square, and actually this c to h7 diagonal, e5 to e4 makes it hard to get in f4 afterwards. So, at the moment these pawns are quite nice, taking control of central squares, but they're also not easy to advance. And, for example, a move like knight g6 would leave the f5 pawn hanging. So, I mean, white's got to try and work out what to do here. And quite an interesting idea played by Koivisto. Probably wouldn't have been the first thing that occurred to me, but Koivisto played c4. I mean, it's a natural move. We're getting back into our King's Indian structure. We're giving support to the pawn on d5. But I don't know. I mean, just it feels a little bit like you're going to end up tempi down in a King's Indian position because you've played c3 and now you're playing c4. But the fact that white has played a4 and black has played a5 means that after rook f8, knight b5, this knight on b5 is very hard to shift. It's attacking the pawn on c7, which ties down the queen to d8, and obviously c6 will allow knight takes d6. So, there's a downside to playing a4, a5. It looks like, you'll find it hard to play b4 and a c5. But this static square for the knight is pretty good too. Now, there's another thing that I have to point out that's weak in the dark in the black structure, and that's this pawn on h6. This pawn on h6, well, first of all, being on h6, it weakens the dark squares, g6 in particular, but also it gives white the opportunity of playing moves like queen c1, attacking h6. And if you play king h7, then you're in the line of this bishop, which again makes it harder to advance your kingside pawns. So even there's a few little problems. I mean, what black's doing though with rook f8, it's protecting the f5 pawn so that the knight can come to g6. And now you're looking to bring the knight to f6, and maybe you'll be able to advance both of these pawns at once, e4 and then f4, or f4 and then e4. So now Koivisto played a very nice move. I like this one very much. And this was a move knight h2. What is the move of knight h2? What's the point of it? Well, the point of it is to get out of the attack of the pawn on e4. So now if you play e4, you're not doing it with tempo. So actually white can just try and then block the advance of the kingside pawns with f4, which reaches a very typical King's Indian type structure. And well, we're going to see a lot of it because that's what occurs in the game afterwards. What should black do? Well, in my engine games that I ran between Stockfish and Koivisto, king h7 was being played, actually both by Stockfish and Koivisto. And here you see the other point to white's idea, to play g4. Very nice idea, and of course, really trying to exploit this bishop on c2 pointing towards the king on h7. Knight c5, king h1, e4, rook g1, and I mean, although Stockfish was managing to hold this, it did get pretty dangerous, and I really wouldn't fancy this at all as black. I mean, we've got moves like g5 and queen h5 coming in, or even gf, and queen h5. Pretty dangerous stuff, really. So, but that was what Stockfish was doing. Fritz played knight e7, which, in all fairness, is a tiny bit weird. I guess some sort of reaction against knight h2. But now white plays the move f4 and blocks the advance of the f pawn. And here black replied. I can understand why black did it, because at some stage f takes e5 is going to be a bit worrying. You know, if you take with a knight, then the black pawn structure is weakened. If you take with the pawn, then well, you know, we're going to get in d6, c5, that sort of stuff. But black played e4 here, and this is a very typical kingside and central pawn structure in the King's Indian, and it's actually known to be in general pretty good for white. The big problem is that in general, you know, white can just simply try and play g4 and undermine the center. And well, if you play g4, eventually you're going to play g takes f5, and then the pawn on e4 is weak, and the bishop, of course, is pointing towards the king. And if you get things right, putting the king to the corner and rook on g1, you can also open the g file. And yeah, I mean, not easy for black to you know, to really hold white back here. Striking thing about it is that, of course, you know, black is attacking the pawn on b2, but Koivisto, also Stockfish, in the games that that I played, they just never worry about playing the move king h1 and giving away that pawn on b2. They never even bother to defend it. It's simply, you know, the positional strength of white's plan is so strong, there's just no point in wasting a tempo. And I find that really striking. You know, I mean, this was a game, you know, Stockfish against Koivisto, knight c5, rook g1, the pawn on b2 still hanging, g4, king h8, rook g2, pawn still hanging. You know, eventually it gets taken here, and actually here's Stockfish, you know, throwing the exchange as well. So you know, the idea is actually that your bishop takes a1, queen takes a1 is incredibly dangerous for black, and otherwise, you know, well, this bishop's not going to get back to the defense of the king's side. But it's really striking that you know, this compensation is obviously, this structure is so strong for white that a pawn, giving a pawn away doesn't matter at all. So, you know, I think really worth remembering this. So bishop takes b2, rook a2, bishop g7, and rook g1, and of course, you know, giving the pawn away on b2 makes it easier for this rook to get over to the second rank. You know, so yeah, I mean, from that point of view, it's yeah, I mean, it's also a you know, almost very good, you know, to have given away that pawn. It's that typical thing of you know, of what the neural nets do: give away the give away pawns in front or here laterally next to your rook, and increase their potential. So here actually I just want to digress a little bit, because there was a game played between Stockfish and Koivisto on my hardware, just one of the engine games I ran, which was absolutely astonishing. I think it's probably the most astonishing game I've ever seen. So Koivisto came up with this very interesting plan of just giving up the h-pawn and going rook f6, and the idea is to get the rook to h6 and trying to stop g4 by attacking the pawn on h3. It's a pretty genius idea, actually. But Stockfish's reply was even more genius. I mean, maybe you want to stop the video and try and work out what Stockfish might have done. I tell you, it'd be pretty tough. It played g4, rook h6, and now bishop d4, just giving away this queen on h5 and you know, exploiting this g file. So rook h5, gh5 played. Knight e5, f takes e5, and you know, obviously f takes e5, bishop e5 is really dangerous. G7's going, so king h8 played, and yeah, sort of thinking, well, you know, what's going to happen here? You know, black's actually threatening just to go bishop takes e5 here, which should be okay. Well, rook takes g7, in we go. So only two pieces for the rook here, and you know, to be honest, okay, e6 check. You know, these pieces are blocked in, but that's only two pieces for the rook. King h6, but now an absolutely stunning move again. And yeah, I mean, just check if you can find it. I was surprised, I have to say. Bishop takes e4, amazing move. What is the point of this move? Well, if f takes e4, we go knight g4 check, and actually the black king is in a little bit of trouble here. If you go back to h7, I go knight f6 check, king h6, and then just rook g2. And there's no stopping bishop e3 mate. If you go knight f5, then rook g6 is checkmate. Easy. If after knight g4 check you play king h7, knight f6, king h8, I take on e4 check, I go knight g5 check, king g8, h6. Just amazing how all of these units, I've only got a piece for the queen, but all of these units are combining, and I thought this was a very sweet picture here. Bishop f6, just the queen on d8 is trapped, and obviously knight e7 allows h8 queen. So after knight g4 check, king takes h5, we go knight f6 check, and things are getting pretty serious for the black king. King h4, I go rook g2, if king takes h3, I just go bishop f2. An amazing little idea. I hadn't spotted it. I was sort of peering carefully. What's the idea? The idea is that this one's mate. Bishop on f2 covers g3, and the knight on f6 covers g4. I've never seen these patterns before. They're really unusual. If you go back to h6, it's just rook g2 again, and knight f5. Well, there's this very nice idea, e7 here, obviously queen e8, queen e8. I've got knight f6 check, and if you go knight takes e7, then rook g7 check, king h8, knight h6, knight f7 check. End of story. But the variations go on. Just keep on enjoying these. Knight f6, king g6, rook g2 check, king f5. And now, obviously, for a human player, it's a nightmare to have to calculate this. Only a piece for the queen here. Knight h5. And, what's the threat? What's the threat? Well, you try and work out what the threat is. Say I go bishop e6. What are you going to do? Actually, there's a few wins here, but by far the cleanest is this gorgeous move, rook g4. Amazing. What am I threatening? Either knight g3 checkmate or knight g7 checkmate, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Absolute genius, I have to say. So amazing lines, amazing game from Stockfish. Just really amazing. Actually, after bishop takes e4, f takes e4 wasn't played. Bishop e6, bishop e3 check, king h5, bishop f3 check, king g6, rook g2 check, king h7, d takes e6. And that's 3 pieces for the rook, right? So not bad, but winning yet, not 100% sure. But after c6, Stockfish uncorked the amazing knight g4. Incredible. If you take the knight on b5, I'm just going knight f6 check, king h8, bishop d4. So knight g6 was played. The knight didn't move. Knight d4. We're just coming into here now. F takes g4, and then bishop e4. Queen f6, rook takes g4. And big pressure on here. Obviously, when you take this knight, you get queen and knight for rook and bishop. It's two pieces versus the rook, just completely winning. And after rook g8, we've got this great move, knight f3. With all sorts of threats, amongst which, knight g5, knight h4, lining up on g6. It's all happening here. Bishop d4 as well is a pretty massive threat. So, if d5, we go bishop d4, takes, and e7. And amazingly enough, this is just winning for white. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible, but I do have to say that this mate with rook g4 is my all-time favorite, really. Quite amazing. Yeah, people ask, why do you run these engine games? Why do you do this? And it's just simply that you get these evocative examples of the power of the position. You don't get this just letting the engine run for 5 minutes and then looking at the screen. You don't get it. You get it when you just let these amazing engines just run riot. And this was great. So but Koi played pretty well as well. G4, super thematic this. Bishop d7, bishop b1, takes. a4. So you know, Fritz is trying to distract white a little bit. I mean, there's loads of good ways now of playing, but actually the next plan that Koi played, Grandmaster Jonathan Tisdall, who follows well, the tweets that I do about computer chess, he said, "Oh, how good to know that the old rules still apply." And I know exactly what he meant, because Koi played bishop d4. And yeah, this is the the archetypal plan against this structure. You undermine with g4, and then what do? You play the knight to f1 into e3, and this is just really causing the opponent's position to creak. So h5 played by Fritz, and actually I've said knight e3, but there's something even stronger, which, yeah, I mean, really. I'm not sure that I would have been flexible enough in my head to spot this, but well, now I've seen it, hopefully I will do. Bishop takes f6, amazing, just giving up your two bishops like that. G takes f5, really ugly structure for white, but this move knight d2, and yeah, this is so powerful. Suddenly everything's collapsing. We've got knight takes e4 coming in to g5, this diagonal is being opened, and we've also got queen h5, and of course once this knight moves over to e4, don't forget rook ag2. It's the most beautiful concentration and coordination of pieces that I've seen in quite a while. So rook f7 played, knight takes e4, queen h4, queen to d3, setting up that battery. Rook g2 is coming in, knight g5 as well. Rook e8, rook takes a3, just getting rid of that pawn. Also doing some lateral defense here. And this works out really well. Knight g5, rook e3 played, and now, yeah, a lovely little sacrifice there. I mean, what's the big problem for black? Simply, well, the king is kind of caught in the kill zone. We've got great outposts for the knight, and well, we've got really powerful ideas, like bishop g6. And actually, white doesn't take that rook. White just ties it up completely. Brings the king to e7, attacks the rook now, and threatening something like knight g5 check. Queen f2, rook e4. I mean, this is where it gets kind of tricky for a human to calculate, because certainly if you're calculating from afar, trying to work out, are there checks? Am I doing something stupid, or am I covering everything? Because it's quite fraught, right? Bishop g6 covering the rook on e4. Knight on e6 covering some dark squares. It's all quite fraught, but it's all very good. Bishop e5, f takes e5, rook f3, e takes d6 check. C takes, knight d4 check, just in time to protect this f pawn. We take on f3, we go king h2, rook g3, queen d1, and Koi won this pretty easily. 2 rooks and a bishop for a queen, and a pawn on top of that. Just absolutely trivial. A really gorgeous game from Koi. I thought it was, just lovely strategy, and starting off with this move knight h2, and then all these classical moves that I've seen many times in classic games in the King's Indian, and yeah, always a nice thrill to see this sort of stuff happening. And well, you can tell from John Tisdall's reaction, it's really something that appeals to human grandmasters. But yeah, I think this game in the sub notes, was absolutely stunning, and I see a position like this and just think, wow, what amazing calculation. We're just sacrificing a queen for a piece. Not obvious, lots of checks. Mate is nowhere close, but just an amazing set of mating patterns. This one, first of all, with the idea of going rook h2 mate. And then, of course, this one with the idea of knight g7, knight g3. Simply superhuman and just incredibly aesthetic. So there we are. I hope you enjoyed the game. If you like this video, then why not give a like, subscribe to the channel, so you can be sort of warned about new videos coming out. Even take a look at the Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, a book packed full with wonderful games like this, with explanations like the ones I've given you, and also a huge number of tips about how to train with engines, and lots of my secret training games with engines over the years. And finally, just thanks very much for watching this video, and I hope I'm going to see you for the next one as well. Thanks for watching.